And completely unrelated, what are your thoughts on net neutrality? The whole
you're all wrong about it. Because everybody in this room thinks net neutrality is a good idea, and it isn't. You all think it's going to go to some sort of hellish corporate America-ruled, dystopian hell where your email is going to get slowed down to a crawl because you can't afford the expensive whatever. Horse shit. All it's doing is taking the internet back to where it was a couple of years ago anyway. And by the way, this is going to be technical, it's going to bore some of you, but I'm going to give you a serious answer since you asked. Net neutrality basically means that every packet of data, every little lump of information on the internet should be treated equally, agnostically of what it contains. So it forbids, for instance, your cable provider, the people who do your internet, so in America it'd be like AT&T or Comcast or whatever, from selling you a service where Netflix is faster, right? So you could pay more to get better quality of video with no buffering and all the rest of it. HBO and Netflix come like beautiful, crisp 4K, like that, because you paid more for it. In my view, this is, the FCC started this under Obama, this net neutrality thing. It's not, the George Soros-funded organizations that are pushing net neutrality and advocating for more government control of the internet have told you two big lies. The first one is that the government should regulate the internet rather than the free market. It is much better, in my view, to have customers and private companies negotiate their own relationship and the market to decide what it can bear, what people are prepared to put up with, and for competition to produce the best results. And second of all, they have told you that this is, about making sure that there's an open, free, internet of an equality internet where everyone gets equal access to whatever. That has never been the case. Every service provider, every server already shapes data. They already shape traffic, excuse me. All of the stuff that net neutrality is designed to eradicate, it never will, because Vodafone is always going to mess around with things. What are your cell networks over here, whatever, Telstra, whatever, they're always going to send some things faster than others, and that will never change. Net neutrality is a cosmetic announcement on the one hand, but really what it represents is the license for the federal government, for the FCC, to wade in and interfere in the relationship between private people and their providers, and to stop companies from providing richer, better, tailored packages to you, the consumer. It is about more government control over a critical utility. So if you're one of those people who reflexively thinks net neutrality sounds like a good idea, you're right, it does sound like a good idea, but you're wrong. It's terrible, and it's just another mechanism of government control, and I want the government out of that completely, out of that relationship. Just leave us to deal with the service providers, and if they screw up, we'll sign up with somebody else. Anyway, like any set of ideas, Islam is like a religion. As any set of ideas, it deserves to be scrutinized. Well, I have scrutinized it, and I have found it wanting. I have found it lacking. Everywhere there is Islam, you will find women oppressed. Everywhere there is Islam, you will find... You're wearing a hijab in the United States of America. What is wrong with you? You see, they want to shout you down by saying, oh, what about me? I'm not so oppressed. Well, let's move on from women. If you don't care about female genital mutilation, don't care about forced marriages, don't care about acid thrown in the faces of your Islamic sisters, if you don't care about any of those things, fine. Let's talk about gays instead. In 12 Islamic countries, I could be killed for my sexuality. Is that okay? 100 million people live in countries where it is illegal to be homosexual. All of those countries are Islamic. This is not an ISIS thing. You will see gays being thrown off the roof in ISIS-controlled territories. But this has nothing to do with terrorism. This is mainstream Muslim culture. Your religion does it everywhere your religion exists. It is a threat, an existential threat to gay people. Everywhere in the world there is Islam, you will find women oppressed, homosexuals murdered, you will find Gang rape. Now, there's a unique phenomenon that doesn't really exist outside of Islamic cultures, of familial gang rape, where fathers, brothers, and cousins go out raping people together. It happened in Rotherham in the UK. And the liberal establishment in the UK didn't investigate this because, according to a government report, not a far right-wing blog, according to a government report, 1,400 young girls were raped in racially or religiously, as you choose to define it, motivated crimes, because both the police and the authorities were too scared of being called racist to intervene. And this pattern repeats itself everywhere there is mass Muslim immigration. My suggestion to you, America, is that you don't need it here. Learn your lesson from 9/11. Learn your lesson from Orlando. These socially regressive hours, they walk out when they don't like the facts. These socially regressive attitudes of Muslims in the West are horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. The surveys show that 52% of British Muslims think that my sex life should be made illegal. 39% of them. Why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? Don't you want to talk about numbers? Are you embarrassed? Are you embarrassed? Are you embarrassed of the hateful culture that surrounds your religion, that oppresses women and murders homosexuals and commits unspeakable acts of terrorism? Are you ashamed of it? Would you like to talk to us about why there's no global Muslim peace movement? Because I hear lots of very upset people at my talks complaining about statistics they can't refute. I don't hear a lot of Muslims standing up against terrorism. Europe, which is a continent now flooded with Muslims. There's Sweden, which now has rape numbers that actually do match feminist statistics. It is a country that prides itself on its feminist credentials. And it is perhaps the only place where rape culture in the West actually now exists. Why? Untrammeled immigration from the Middle East. Malmo in Sweden is now the rape capital of Europe, for one very obvious reason. And then there's Germany, where thousands of women were assaulted on the streets after their genius Chancellor Angela Merkel decided to invite millions of refugees across her country's borders. Now those same refugees are violating women's rights, and feminists are going along with it, making excuses for it and covering up for them. In Britain, where I come from, Muslim rape gangs have molested 1,400 young girls in Rotherham, in sort of middle east of England. And the government report, this is not some sort of crazy right-wing conspiracy, the government report said the reason this went on for a decade, for 10 years, was that the government and that the police and various authorities were afraid of seeming Islamophobic, and that the left-wing Labour and feminist politicians didn't want to seem culturally insensitive. And in the process, 1,400 young girls were raped. Every immigrant group seeks a better life for themselves. They move to a new country to try to enjoy the fruits of the civilization they move to, with one exception, and that's Islamic immigration, who seek to create replicas of their own hellhole countries in the places they come to. Islam is the only group that tells its members not, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, but when in Rome, demand benefits and rape people. The situation with regressive social attitudes in Muslim communities in the West is out of control. And your politicians are not talking to you about it. Your journalists are not being honest with you about it. And it is becoming one of the great underreported on or even completely unreported on scandals of the modern era. These are people who have views that are profoundly antithetical to our own. And you've got a taste in America of what this might look like in Orlando. I went down there straight after this had happened and gave a speech and talked to people down there, and they were sort of mystified by how this could ever have happened in America. And I said, well, it's happening in America because you're going down the same path that we went down in Europe. In Orlando, about 45 minutes drive north, somewhere called Sanford, I think, there's a mosque.
And this mosque hosts a guy who said that the compassionate thing to do to fix homosexuality in the US, the compassionate response, was to kill them all. And this is the kind of environment in which Omar Mateen